Anybody who's listening can have a better situation outside of work if they will just take some simple steps. Their relationships can get better. So to me, I thought, let's give them some tactics, some things they can practice. Go back to the athletes that we've worked with in the past and the coaches. They're constantly practicing every day. It's what makes them elite. And so why would we be any different? Why would we want to have an elite family, but we're not willing to put in the work to practice? And if we'll practice, it's amazing what happens.
Hey, Uncommon Leaders, welcome back. This is the Uncommon Leader Podcast, and I'm your host, John Gallagher. Randy Gravitt, welcome to the Uncommon Leader Podcast. It's great to have you on the show. I'm looking forward to our conversation today. How you doing?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks for having me. Pumped up about hanging out with you. Thanks for all you do for leaders. It's cool.
It's going to be really cool to talk about your book that's come out now. Winning Begins at Home. However, I don't give any of my first-time guests a break. I always ask them the first question just to get them started and get them loose. And that's to tell me a story from your childhood that still impacts who you are as a person or a leader today.
Yeah, that's great. Great question. Love looking back. And actually, part of the book goes back to my childhood. Really, I dedicated the book to my dad. And crazy story. I think I was maybe 12 years old. I was playing Little League Baseball. And it was the summer that, from where I'm from a little small town. So it may have been invented a little before that. But it's the summer that aluminum baseball bats come to our hometown. First one I ever see. I get one for Christmas before the season, and I was so excited. I thought, man, I'm gonna be hitting some home runs this year, because I wasn't much of a home run hitter. I was just a little guy, but it was my last year in the league, and I was kind of one of the old guys now, and so it was my turn to be one of the guys. And my dad, that's the year my dad said, no, we're gonna actually teach you how to bunt. And I thought, man, this guy has lost his mind. And he did. And there's actually a story in the book about this, in the fable or the parable, about this guy teaching the kids how to bunt. And it really goes back to my dad. And I had no idea at the time, John, but he was actually teaching me that if you're really going to be a leader, you're gonna have to learn to sacrifice for others and help them win. So yeah, I go all the way back to 10, 11, 12 years old, learning those lessons. My dad taught me so much through that, him and my mom both. So, yeah, it's fun to look back.
Love that. Thanks for sharing that. Just over my shoulder there, right there, is my only home run ball. I guess they don't give you when I was 12 years old, back just a few years ago. And they don't give you those and put numbers on them for the bunting, but you're absolutely right. The sacrifice that happens, it often doesn't show up in the box score in terms of that win, but as a leader, there are a lot of things we do. John Maxwell's pretty clear about the law of sacrifice as well. So I appreciate you sharing that story. And I think it does tee up really well to really talk about your book. Now, when I got a chance to read an advanced copy, I was pretty excited about it. And you had me in the first paragraph. I'd love to read frankly, the introduction and the conclusions first, acknowledgments, just to see about the author. And one of the things you touched on in the very first page was, the challenges that families are under today. One of the statistics that you mentioned that's very important to me as I go through my coaching process as well is that the divorce rate in our country is at about 50%. So that sets up a pretty good why. But tell me what was the catalyst behind your book coming out, Winning Begins at Home?
Yeah, so I through the years I have a leadership development company, and we work with all kind of companies and organizations, and we do training and teaching and executive coaching, and work with just lots of high-powered leaders, all kind of sectors and industries, which is cool. But one of the things that I kept noticing was there's just this struggle these days with people. I mean, they're winning at work. A lot of people feel like they're winning at work, but what's happening outside of work is not so good. And so I had somebody tell me, if you win at work and you lose at home, I think you still lose. It came through a conversation. I was actually with a football coach, professional football coach and assistant coach, who was a former player and had won a Super Bowl years ago. And he talked about how when the game was over, he said, I'm standing over, the stage is out and the confetti's falling. It's great. But he said, it's just this one little area. It looks on TV like it's everything, but it's just one little corner of the field. And I'm standing there looking, he said, at some of our coaches, and their families are not where they need to be. And he said, now I'm a coach, and he said, I've got two little girls, and I'm asking myself, can you, and he's working for a great team and they've got a chance to win a Super Bowl. He said, I'm wondering, can you win a Super Bowl and have a great family? And he asked me that question. And he said, what do you think? And I told him, I said, well, if you can't win a Super Bowl and without losing your family, why do you want a Super Bowl? And we started having this conversation. And then all of a sudden it just started going everywhere I would go. People would say, man, I don't feel like I'm winning outside of work. And so everybody's talking about, all the leadership people are talking about stuff to help your companies get better. I mean, it's what we do. It's how we make our living, but it just was a passion of mine. How can we help these leaders win outside of work? And so I thought, I'll write this story and put this strategy together and try to help some people win where it matters most. So that's really how it started.
No, I appreciate that. And I really appreciate the format of the book being, the biggest part of the book being a parable. So I'm going to put you in with some other great authors that I love to read, John Gordon and Andy Andrews, and even Patrick Lencioni, writing leadership books really about stories, about parables. And we know the success that Jesus had as well in terms of telling parables to train his disciples. So it all goes really well. And then the second half of your book, or a little bit less than half, is the tactics and a plan to help put that in place. But what drove you to write it in the form of a story rather than the traditional, we'll call it a structure book, if you will?
Yeah, well, I'm actually a storyteller, and I just connect with stories better. I think people connect with stories. I love the idea that you can put some truth out there that really people can resonate with. John Gordon actually endorsed the book. He's a friend, and he went down that road. And then Mark Miller, who I work with, he's written the last 3 or 4 books have been what we call big people books, but the first 8 or 10 that he did were parables as well. And I've written a couple of parables, and I just think they connect with people. Lencioni's books have been great. I've loved those. I just love the simple, relatable character with a mentor that can kind of help us see some things maybe that are unique to us, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's just every single person struggling with, so I don't know. I felt like that's a good way to go about it. I'm not against traditional books, but the parables just connect with me. So I thought, I heard David McCullough, he's an historian. He said one time, somebody asked him about his books. He said, I always write a book that I would like to read. And so that's what I did here. I thought I'll just write a book I think it'd be fun to read. So that's what I did.
Well, I thought it was great. And I think folks should go out and get the book because they're going to learn a bunch. And it's a fun story to go through. And I love the play on words, even the title, Winning Begins at Home, both in the home, but also the baseball analogy that you use throughout is a lot of fun to read through. So I think you did a really nice job, and I appreciate that. So let's talk about that with regards to the story and what it meant, a strategy for winning beyond work. So one of the things that you talk about in there is really having to redefine what success is. And I think you touched on this a little bit, but what are some of the barriers that you see folks going through that they believe they can or cannot, frankly, win at both work and life?
Yeah, well, I think the world that we live in now is way more complex than the world I grew up with, with aluminum baseball bats. I mean, it has gotten to a point where technology is just so high speed. And even think about your email. If you have email, I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't have email in today's world. And our inboxes stay full. There's all these emails, and we've got details coming at us like never before, and just on and on and on. It becomes a lot of noise in today's world. I've been reminding leaders lately, if you don't believe it, think about this. Noise is on your schedule, whether you put it there or not. I mean, it's just, there's so much noise going on, from those emails to, your people, even your family. I mean, there's just noise all in the system, so to speak. And yet quiet doesn't make it on your calendar unless you put it there. And I think sometimes we just don't have enough space in our lives to really think through what do we want and at work, and much less at home. And if we're not careful, we just end up going through the motions. And so I just think the challenges are bigger than they've ever been. There's a lot of angst and strife in our culture now that it just feels like it just gets ramped up every year. maybe every day, you know, as I think about it. So I think a lot of that challenge, and people at some point just say, you know, I'm just trying to survive, and I'm not really sure that's what we're born to do. I think that we really are born to have a great life full of joy, and if we're not careful, we can just forfeit all that, and then we get to the end and there's a bunch of regret, and that's just not what we want. So,
Randy, I love that. You've been a leadership coach to my hometown, Pittsburgh Pirates. As I was growing up as a kid, as a Pittsburgh Pirate fan, they haven't given me a whole lot to cheer about lately. So maybe you can go back and work with them a little bit more. You've been a leadership coach for the Buffalo Bills as well, and I'm sure high performers in your leadership organization. You know, how do you help them get started? Because now you're dealing with basically with individuals who have been told for a long time that they're doing things great and they are successful, and you get a chance to chat with them about really what that means. How do you get started with them?
yeah, well, I think at the end of the day, we're all people, and every single person is just trying to do the best they can for themselves and their family and the people around them, their community. They still care about people and still care about stuff. And even those organizations that you mentioned, some of the other organizations that we've worked with, Chick-fil-A, and lot of really great leaders in those organizations care about their community. And in fact, Chick-fil-A's stating right now their vision is to be the most caring company in the world. I love that. I think it's just great that you start thinking about community impact and all that kind of stuff. And so it can be a ball players making millions of dollars. At the end of the day, if they really you pull the onion layer back and or look under the hood, there's typically somebody under there that really wants to have a great family life, wants to have a great, you know, impact on the field. They like to make a lot of money. That's fantastic. But if you just make a bunch of money, it goes back really to our definition of winning. If you just make a bunch of money and you miss out on the things that matter most, I'm not sure we end up winning. And so I always talk about making sure that we're helping other people win. That, to me, that's what makes you a winner. If I lie down at night and all I did was just take up space and I didn't help anybody else, I'm not sure I really won. So I want to remind those athletes, coaches, anybody that we're working with that there's a different kind of way to think about life. And if we're not careful, we'll just think like everybody else thinks, and then we end up missing out on what we really want. So I don't know if that, you know, that answers your question, but
I think you're pretty close, right on. I mean, listen to what you say, successful leaders, successful coaches, they do win games. There's no doubt about it. They do succeed in business, but the ones that are great are the ones that have an impact on others and grow other leaders that result in generational impact and things that are going on. So I think you're spot on in terms of that story. And it does force us to reevaluate our definition of success. And I believe one of the things you touched on there is you had defined in your book is success as when the people who know you the best love you the most. I just found that as profound and simplistic and epic. And I think as leaders, too often we, if I own it a little bit myself as well, see success as our success in business, and it becomes very individual, especially as an entrepreneur. But really the greatest story ever told, as I talk about it in my coaching program, is when those who know you the best love you the most, and those who know you the best write your name on their list of people who have made a positive impact on their life. So I think you're right there. And I want you to elaborate on something. The other thing you said early on in the book is that love is a verb. You had 2 points: love first, live last. And you said inside the book that love is a verb. So expand on that a little bit for me.
So that's a great question. So as I'm working with these sports teams, let me go back to that. They all have fundamentals. You think, and really any endeavor in life, but football team, blocking and tackling. If you're a musician, you've got scales and the ability to read music. And there's lots of things that we can practice on. So I started asking myself, what are the things in a family that are the fundamentals? And I came up with these 2 ideas of loving first and living last. And so loving first, I think that's a really great place to start. It's just the deal. If I will give people the benefit of the doubt, and I will really begin to be present when I'm present, some of these kind of things. So I started asking myself this question: Is love just a noun? I mean, we think it is a noun. I mean, it's like we describe love, but love at the end of the day is something you do. It's about sacrifice, and you demonstrate love, and you can't demonstrate love unless you love. And so that mindset to me, it really shaped the way I thought about raising our own family. My wife and I, we have 4 daughters, and they're grown up now and all have kids of their own. But as I've watched them grow up, I always ask myself, what's it like to be on the other side of the table? And this language I use is, let's give them the home field advantage. I find a lot of times we want to get the last word. We want to make our point, and I'm just not sure that's a really good formula for home. It's really good if we go back again what we say. How do we help the other person win? It's almost I've got a friend who says it's like an offensive lineman mindset. The we're not even in the football season right now, but everything is about the NFL and everybody's talking about. But if you listen to it you watch anything, you'll hear about quarterbacks and coaches and receivers and people who score, or the coaches who are making the decisions. You don't hear very much about offensive linemen, and I think that is a beautiful picture of somebody who wakes up in the morning and they show up at these facilities and they get all taped up and padded up and they go out on the field and they open up holes so other people can score. And if you're a mom or a dad and you're listening, you're probably not going to be thanked for keeping your kids alive another week or making sure they're fed and spending time with them, those kind of things. They just won't really appreciate that like they should. But let me say that every time you show up and you help somebody else, you demonstrate love. And this can happen in the workplace as well. It doesn't have to be just a home deal. But I love this mindset to live your life to help other people win, to open up a way so somebody else can score. When you do that, to me, that makes you a winner. So that would be my little spin there on love being a verb.
Randy, I love that, and I got to imagine you didn't have much of a choice growing up in a house with 4 daughters. Bless your heart, as my mother-in-law here taught me to say in the South. I had 2 sons, and I think there was a reason that God gave me boys instead of girls. There's no doubt about it. Did you have a dog that was a girl as well?
I'll interrupt you and say there's probably a reason he gave me girls too. I mean, they have softened me, and some of the hard edges came off. They're like sandpaper, but it was really good.
Fair enough. They probably, hopefully you let them know that a little bit now. And as your grandkids as well, you get a chance to give some of that back. So
yeah,
I want to move just a little bit further, because almost in the action side, one of the stories inside of the book, there was a quote that you said that I thought was really powerful, and it said, "Champions dominate the controllables." And I'll just leave that there. Tell me more about that, because I love some of those short quotes that go throughout your book. Folks have got to get your book.
So this one actually came years ago. I was down in Bradenton at spring practice, actually with the Pirates, and they had this value in their organization that said control the controllables. And so I'm about to speak to all their coaches. They got 80 coaches from low A ball all the way up to their major league guys, bunch of coaches in this room. And I walk in, and the first thing I say is, I think you guys need to redo one of your values. And this is the first time I met these guys, and I thought they were going to throw me out of camp, because it's like, okay, what's this guy saying? And here's what I said. I said, if it's controllable, you should dominate it. You don't need to control the controls. You should dominate the controllables. I like this mindset. If there's things under my control, that I do my very best to run up the score in those areas. I think there's so many things that are not under my control, and I'm going to have to work really hard to have the right attitude. And what if I demonstrate love to somebody and they don't love me back? And there's a lot of things I can't control, but the things that I can control, my attitude, whether I show up, whether I'm, let's say I'm reading to my kids. You got your boys back in the day, you're going to read to them at night. It's easy to be there without being there. I think we come home and we're tired and we need to, chill. And if we're not careful, we'll just go through the motions. And so I don't want to be that kind of dad. I don't want to be that kind of mom if I'm listening here. Or even if you're a kid, I mean, as you start thinking about how you treat your brother or your sister, there's just so much there that we can control. And I just, those are the areas. It's hard enough, but if there's things that I get to choose, I want to dominate that. I really want to try to, bring my very best to that. And I think that's what makes those relationships better.
So bring it home a little bit here, Randy. Then tell me some of the habits or disciplines or traits that you had that help you to be or help you to love first and live last as you raised your children and as you succeeded as a leader as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, as I look back, there are no perfect moms and dads. There are no perfect families. We're just all people. And there are things that I look back and think, man, I could have done better there. I'm learning with my grandkids. You get a little bit of a do over here. And But I think some of the things that really helped our family, and one of the things I love about our family now is everybody's still close, and they try to get together, and girls all love each other. It's really fun. But I think one of the things that we did that was really important is we showed up for each other's events. That would be just just trying to be there when you could. And I know different people have different schedules, and you don't have to be at everything, but I want to encourage you to ask yourself, do I want to prioritize this thing at work over this thing at home? And at some point, your time is what's on the line here, and not just your time. Your time is what you judge that against, but it's those relationships that are going to last way beyond that project or something you have going. And so, how you manage all that capacity side, we talk about on the work side. There's things that we have to do there, and structure that we build and all that. But there's only one dad. There's only one mom for your kids. There's only one of you that can show up. And so, to me, that's where it started. The other thing I would say that was really important was the words we use. There's an old proverb that says, "Words kill, or words give life. They're either poison or they're fruit," and you get to choose. So that's what the proverb says. And I love that. And I think sometimes if we're not careful, our words can really be damaging. I heard somebody say one time that a father's words are like a mom's words are 100 pounds. This guy said a dad's words are like 1,000 pounds. And moms usually have a better way of saying stuff than us dads do. But I just, either way, if you're a mom or a dad, your words are weighty, and they really impact your kids either in a negative way or a positive way, and you get to choose that. And I love that. So the way we use our words is important. There's a quote in the book that says, "You're never persuasive when you're abrasive." I think sometimes we're harsh with each other if we're not careful. We get with the people that know us the best, and rather than wanting them to love us the most, we just want to fix them or point it out to them, and our expectations can be so high. And my wife always told me, saying it louder doesn't make you more right. I think sometimes we need to back up and just really ask ourselves, do we want to be right, or do we want to get it right? And I think when we really begin to evaluate our words, and we really speak positive words, it can be so life-giving. And I don't have any regret when I say positive stuff. It's when if I'm negative or I'm harsh. I don't know anybody that's ever like, "Oh, I love it when you're harsh with me. It makes me want to change." That's not, we know that, but sometimes we have to pull back and have that. And so hopefully the book gives some people just lots of ideas there about ways that they can get that right.
Well, I think you do a really nice job in the back of the book, putting it on the lower shelf for us as leaders. The first thing you run into is the 15-question assessment in the back. And I won't go through all of those because, again, I think folks need to read it. But I guess I got two. Well, first of all, there was one that pierced me, and you just said it made me write it down. Saying it louder doesn't make you more right. One of the questions is, are you able to remain calm, basically, even when you get upset, and not raise your voice? And I had to be very reflective myself, if I own that. And some of the things I'm capable of doing are raising my voice, trying to get folks to hear me more than they might not hear me the first time, but you go through. But tell me about the construct of the back of that book. You invest a big part of the book in those exercises, tactics, disciplines. How did you put that together? And I'm going to assume that's part of your regular coaching program that you have as well.
Yeah, it really is. So we go and we teach content, and about high performance, and talent, and to all kind of stuff. Engagement. I mean, people's engagement so low. We've done all this work, and for Chick-fil-A, we did a lot of that, and tried to help them with all that stuff. And so one of the things we've done on the back side of that is try to make it actionable. One of the things I really believe is that you behave your way to high performance. I know my buddy Mark was on your show. I don't know if he said this or not, but we talk about it all the time. Hope is not a strategy. And I think sometimes when we get in our family life, we're like, I hope it gets better, or maybe something's going to change. And that's not enough. We have to have something we can do to behave our way to where we want to go. And so I thought, why not do it in this book? I love the story. I think the story is good, and you can get a lot out of the story. But at the end of the day, that activation guide is really to me, that's where the magic is. It's anybody who's listening can have a better situation outside of work if they will just take some simple steps their relationships can get better. I mean, really any area of their life outside of work can get better if they'll apply some of the things that we talked about there. So to me, I thought, let's give them some tactics, some things they can practice. Go back to the athletes that we've worked with in the past and the coaches. They're constantly practicing every day. It's what makes them elite. And so why would we be any different? Why would we want to have an elite family, but we're not willing to put in the work to practice? And if we'll practice, it actually, it's amazing what happens.
Well, I think a nice job with that. I found myself, you set it up really well for the next book coming out, because I found myself at the end of the parable saying, oh, I want more. I want to hear how it kept going. And that's part of the story. I mean, you create that next part of the story as a leader by completing those exercises. At least that's what I make up about it in terms of how it's going on. So look, Randy, folks, read your book, and I'm sure many are going to buy it. I expect it to be on the bestseller list. When folks have read it, they put it up on a shelf like the one behind me, and they see the binder of it, 6 months, 9 months from now. What do you hope, even though it's not a strategy, what do you hope that winning begins at home, what type of impact it has on an individual and what they think of when you see your book?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I would say the first thing is I hope that they will take some of the stuff out of the back of that, and it will become a regular part of what we call it, a family blueprint. I remember years ago when we built our home, actually the home where I live now. So we've been here 20 years, but when we built it, my wife comes to me and says, I want a house. And I'm like, well, we have a house. And she's like, no, I want a new house. And I'm like, or I want another house. I'm like, why do we need two houses? I don't want this house anymore. I want another. And it was crazy. She had a graph paper with the whole thing designed out. And now we live here, and it looks a lot like what she had on that paper. It was pretty cool. And she's not an architect. We had to have an architect to tell us where the thermostats and that kind of stuff go and what looks like on the outside. But she laid it out like, this is what I think would be great for our family. And if you can, back in the day, we had one little bathroom for 4 daughters. She's like, that's not going to work long term for what we're doing here. And so I think that mindset of having a blueprint for what you want, that just hit me. And so in the back of the book, there is that family blueprint that you create. And I would hope somebody would continually come back to that and do you talk about the assessment questions. Those things are things that we could ask ourselves every month and have conversations about over coffee with our spouse or one of our kids. I mean, I think that's important. But really, beyond that, beyond the individual who reads the book, and I hope a bunch of people do that and their families get better. But really, I'm passionate about everybody getting to grow up in a great family. I had that opportunity. Wasn't a perfect family. There was lots of dysfunction, just like every other family. But I think in today's world, there's so much instability for kids that don't get to grow up with their parents, or there's strife between siblings as they get older, and a lot of that is foundational. It just wasn't there. And so that blueprint, when we built this home, first thing we did was a foundation. I hope that book becomes a foundation to grow a bunch of great families around the world, because I'm not sure, no matter which way you vote, I'm not sure the government's about to fix all the problems that we have. Or I've got a bunch of friends who are educators, and they're all telling me education, or that they're teachers, that education's not about to fix it all. I think it starts at home. And so to me, this can be a stepping stone to that. And I hope people not only get the book, but they'll get it for their friends and the people around them that they want to encourage as well, because this family unit, it's really to me, it's the most important unit.
Love that. Randy, thank you for that. Where do you want folks to find your book, Randy? We get it coming out today when this podcast is released. Where do you want them to go find it?
Yeah, well, it's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and anywhere you get your books, it's there. We also have, I'll give them our site. It's available at leadeveryday.com. And I will say this: if they buy the book this week and they come back to Lead Every Day and they can buy it anywhere, but if they come to Lead Every Day and they put in their info there, we've got a bunch of stuff that we've created, a bunch of bonus stuff. I think there's $150 worth of bonus stuff. We've done a course on this. We're giving them access to our Lead Everyday Academy, which is what we use in our corporate space, and all kind of fun stuff there for them to do. So wherever you buy it, come back to leadeveryday.com And I think it's leadeveryday.com/winning, or you can go to winningbeginsathome.com. Either one, it'll take you to the same page, and you get all those bonuses there. All kind of fun stuff that we'll do for your company if you buy enough copies. We're doing some cool stuff there. So yeah, check that out. It'd be great.
Excellent.
Help us.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll put the links to the show in the show notes to make sure that happens. Randy, I sure have appreciated your time that you've invested with the listeners of the Uncommon Leader podcast today. I want to finish. You may have touched on some of these, or maybe there's just another thing that you really haven't had a chance to say yet. But the last question I finish up all my guests with is I'm going to give you a billboard. You got it there right in Atlanta, and there's a lot of traffic in Atlanta. I've learned that recently going through there. So you got a lot of people are going to drive by and see it. What's the message you want to put on that billboard, and why do you put that message on, Randy?
Yeah, well, before I answer that, let me say thank you to all you do and your show. It's great. I've loved that you're doing what you're doing to help serve leaders. So that's fantastic. If I had a billboard and I could put one message on it, it's kind of a little bit of a jolt. But if you win at work and you lose at home, I think you still lose. Let's make sure we can do everything we can to win where it matters most.
Love that, Randy. Thank you again. Best of luck on the launch of the book and everything going forward. Okay.
That's great. Thank you, John.